Welcome to Midlife Catalyst, a place where ordinary people share extraordinary stories. I'm Amanda Younts, and today's guest has much to offer around her lived experiences with life transformation to move from being stuck and bound by the golden handcuffs to living her passion. Kelly Brown is a powerhouse recruiter, author, and speaker whose book, Acclaimed Journey to Aloha, chronicles her bold, faith-fueled pivot from chaos to clarity. A military spouse and founder of Acclaimed Recruiters, Kelly shares how leaving behind the comfort of the known led to healing, purpose, and a life she never imagined. Her story inspires others to trust the process, lean into transformation, and say yes to their own aloha. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today on the Midlife Catalyst Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Amanda. This is great.
I am so excited to hear your journey of finding your aloha and helping myself and the listeners find ours as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The truth is, so the book I wrote, it's called Acclaimed Journey to Aloha. And, the term aloha is really because I went on this wild spiritual journey that led me to Hawaii. And I say Hawaii because that's the proper enunciation, but it's Hawaii. And I say my journey to aloha because aloha means a lot of things, but it's truly, for the book, it's a metaphor. So finding your journey to whatever it is, if it's peace, if it's a geographical location, it's your own personal eat, pray, love journey, but whatever your aloha is the one thing that, separates you from the world that you're living in and the bondage that you're in to complete and total happiness and freedom. So I think that's the essence of what encapsulates what the book is about.
I love that because a theme I used at my last workplace was find your beach. And it doesn't mean we're going to the beach, right? It's the same thing. It was a metaphor for whatever your happy is. Might be the mountains or your backyard or that place of peace. You've got to visualize that. You've got to recreate it in your life. And you can't depend on society, your workplace, other people to do that for you. So that's why I resonate so deeply with you
aloha.
and your story. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, how many people sit in a cubicle for like 40 plus years and their background screen is a beach in Hawaii? Exactly. Mm-hmm. So essentially it's like that's their aloha, and maybe even just having a screensaver will take you away to that aloha for a few minutes. But okay, so how do we get out of that space?
Yeah.
How do we get out of that stuck feeling of being in a cubicle, just fantasizing what aloha looks like? So yeah, I mean, I could take it all the way back. So I grew up, really, my parents were the ones that told me I was supposed to be a salesperson. So while I was still in college, I ended up getting into a career just in order to get experience. So I ended up in logistics transportation, was supposed to be an internship, and that resulted in a 13-year career that after 5-10 years, I was waking up and I'm like, what am I still doing this for? But early on, I was very successful. So I ended up in the golden handcuffs. And now I'm making good money. I'm an expert in my field. I kept getting promotions and I had a global territory. So I'm living in South Florida. And I'm just like, by all accounts, I appear to be very successful. I'm late 20s, early 30s, driving a nice car, living in a nice house, and everything's great. But I had those golden handcuffs because I had to ascertain the career that had took me so many years to build up. And the biggest caveat to all this was the deepest desire of my heart was to find a husband and to share my life with somebody. Because when you're successful like that, a lot of what you're doing is career oriented. And whether, it's after hours or playing golf or travel, relocating a bunch of times, I just recognized that love wasn't coming into my life and long term. So coincidentally, I moved. So I always thought that being stuck in Miami was the reason why I was single. And I was like, the dating scene isn't good down here, making up excuses. I ended up getting relocated twice for my job and then ended up back in South Florida a few years later. And that was the point that I recognized that the common denominator and the problem was me. It wasn't my geographical location. So I was just very, very frustrated. And at the same time, I was at the top of my career, just got the role of a lifetime. I was winning like big awards, 40 under 40, appearing in these big global magazines. Like everything was wonderful. But I was truly unfulfilled in what I wanted truly in life, which was a husband, but something different, not to feel stuck. So it was that year was the first year that I actually just turned my faith over to God. And what really happened was I posed a question, God, I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? Why don't I have a husband? And I just remember I got the response. And when I hear from God, it's not audible. It's something that kind of gets downloaded into my soul. And we all have that experience with our creator, whatever anybody believes in,
Right.
whatever conversation that you're having, it's something that's very profound. But God posed the question to me and asked me if I deserved a husband. And that was like, that was an awakening in and of itself. So it was during 2017 that essentially I basically just started to break down my life and who I had built this person up to be, which really wasn't me. You know, when you're working in a career and your life is mandated by your salary and the people around you, you fall into that trap and you just feel as though, okay, well, if I'm going to be successful, this is how I have to be and the way to be and the way to act. And I had recognized that by kind of breaking down who I really was, I was starting to see who I was becoming and the person that I was always meant to be. But mind you, I mean, I was in my early 30s here too. So I did like a deep dive into the Bible really for the first time. And I was always a believer, but I'd never read the Bible, which is crazy. Like for me to believe something that's so impactful in our existence, but for me to never actually explore why, like it kind of befuddles me now. But long story short, I mean, I read the Bible. Whether you're a believer or not, it's an incredible book. Like it's insane. It's the greatest book I've ever read. So I read the Bible and then fast forward 2017, one day sitting on my bed reading the scripture, got this massive reckoning that the Lord was calling me out of my life and telling me to basically leave everything behind and travel to Hawaii. And I remember just thinking how wild it sounded. And that would have been on a Saturday that I got the calling. And then on a Sunday, I basically just started getting rid of everything I owned. Like anything in my house, I would just put outside with a free sign for somebody to take. And I knew that I had to purge myself in order to go through this. And then on Monday, I called my boss, told him, God's calling me to Hawaii. I'm leaving the company. Of course, he thought I was nuts. Everybody thought I was nuts. And I obviously thought I was starting to lose it too, because it was a crazy thing. I mean, for somebody at my age making the money that I was making and the career that I had, it just didn't seem to make sense. So of course, like rumors were like, oh, she has a terminal illness or Kelly's gone crazy, whatever. But when you're on these journeys, because your life is yours. So therefore, when you're pursuing these journeys, who cares what anybody thinks? Opinions, even my own mother was like, you know, Cal, this is crazy. Don't give away everything you own. Like, what are you doing? And I even had to tell my mother, I'm like, you know, this was a calling that God put on my heart. And there's many times in the Bible that God tells people to do crazy things, and you just have to abide by it. So it took me a few weeks to kind of purge out my life. And then I had to start this path to get to Hawaii. And the reason why it took so long to get to the island was because I brought my dog with me. And if you're familiar with Hawaii, you can't just bring dogs in and out because they're the only state that doesn't have rabies. So they have a very, very strict policy about bringing dogs to the island. And therefore, they have like a prerequisite that the dog has to stay on the mainland for like 120 days. And then you can bring them. So I was facing a couple of things, right? So I was quitting my job because I was no longer going to serve the job. So therefore, I wasn't going to continue to collect a paycheck knowing that I'm not going to bother with it anymore. But also, I had a very expensive lifestyle that I was leading in Fort Lauderdale at the time. So therefore, I needed to leave my house because I had quit my job and find a very cheap path to spend the next maybe 120 days to get to Hawaii. So I did. I basically went from like this bougie corporate executive, like high heels and really fancy clothing, fancy dinners, to all of a sudden like basically living out like in the wilderness, camping across country for the next 4 or 5 months. And I'd never been camping before. So that's why there's a lot of hilarity in my journey to Hawaii, because I didn't know the first thing about camping, tents, nothing. But I think that journey in and of itself was extremely humbling, because it wasn't like I had hit rock bottom in my life and had this homeless journey. I had actively chosen to pursue this homeless endeavor. And I guess with that being said, the interesting thing is like you would think in the book that I would just be like skipping along, living in the woods and everything was glorious, but it was just a really, really tough struggle. Because a lot of the times I'd be sitting in the forest, like eating ramen, looking back on my old life, like, dude, what are you doing? Like now you're trying to figure out how you're going to get to Hawaii, try to figure out how to set up a tent. You're by yourself and you left everything behind for what? Like, what are you, nuts? Yeah. So there's a lot of that, a lot of tears and crying. And then eventually I do make it to the islands. So the claim journey to Aloha is a lot of the meat of the story and basically like more of a spiritual awakening, humility, a lot of humility, literally eating humble pie. And there's examples of that in order to just really kind of strip down to who I was supposed to be and meant to be and really prepare me for the next journey of life. So if you had told me, I was thinking about the other day, if you had told me 7 years ago what my life would look like today, back then, first of all, I would be like absolutely amazed and excited, obviously. And I would have, of course, done it all over again, even though it was the absolute hardest thing I've ever done. So yeah, so I did make it to Hawaii.
So many things to break down. I totally understand because like I shared with you and the listeners know, I am now a year into my journey and can very much understand and empathize with the struggles. So you give me hope that to keep going. I think when we get done, I'm going to need to go purge some more things. That's pretty inspirational there. But those distractors, the people, the questioners, I mean, it's enough that because I know you have your internal doubts and those reflections, but how do you shut out the noise? What worked for you to just stay the course?
I guess what's funny about my journey, like in contrast to yours, is that I literally was like living in the wilderness, right? So it's funny how quickly as human beings, our minds can easily change from 1 minute, like I'm a corporate executive eating caviar. And then the next, all of a sudden, like I'm a desolate single weirdo, living in the wilderness, and how quickly I felt as though I was outside of the norm of society. But what happened was, as I was along my journey, people were slowly starting to hear that I went out on this crazy journey. So I'd get the phone calls. I mean, a lot of the times when I get to a campsite, I'd have like 12 missed calls. So you could kind of see how I talk about it in the book. And I was taking these calls and basically like just sharing that I fell so deeply and passionately in love. And I was sharing that like I'm so in love with Jesus that like nothing else supersedes this mission for his glory. And I mean, not many people can argue that, but I even had one woman say to me, she's like, Cal, I've known you for so many years. I've watched you grow that career, blood, sweat, and tears for years. And she's like, just to see you walk away, she's like, that's crazy. And she's like, and I'll be honest with you, I know a lot of Jesus freaks, like Jesus freaks are weirdos. And she's like, but you're not weird. So it makes me believe that there's something to this. But I did get a lot of that. But at the end of the day, even my mother knew this. Like I'm somebody, once I get something stuck in my head, like full throttle, like we're doing this. And the other part of it was the fact that I had nothing to turn around to. Like even if somebody got into my head and said, this is crazy, where was I going to go? I didn't have home to go back to. I didn't have stuff to go back to or a job. So I put myself in a position that failure wasn't an option. And therefore, like people are going to be naysayers. And the same thing, if you're starting a company, if you're starting a business, a lot of people are going to try to talk you out of it because it's not their own strength and courage. And whatever their reflection of what they're feeling on themselves, they're going to try to cast doubt on you. And like, who cares? Like, and I guess that's the beauty of like, I just turned 40 and I start to care less and less about what people think about me.
Yes.
Of course, early 30s, still kind of in that
would
realm.
Have been hard. It's those traps. I call it performing. And people think that's who you are, the role you're playing and the performance you're leading by putting on the high heels and having the fancy dinners and the cars and all the things. And you're like, I was just playing a role. Did I play it well? Yes. But internally, you're numb. It's not soul-filling.
Yeah, you're 100% playing a role. And it's so ironic because you look back on it and you're like, I was a clown. I was just kind of dancing along to amuse everybody around me. But at the end of the day, and I talk about this a lot in the book, at the end of the day, it was always just left to myself, my own devices. Right. And nobody truly cared. And when you go out on these journeys, that's when you realize who your true friends are. That's when you actually see the people that are invested in you. And I mean, the funny thing is that you still kind of play into this facade while you're on the journey. Because I give an example to where like I hopped on one of my company calls while I was journeying around. And I got on and I very confidently told everybody because it was announced my departure from the company. And so they didn't know I was on the call. So I unmuted the call and I was like, hey, it's Kelly Dockrell. I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm resigning from the company because I've given my life to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And then I just unmuted it, or I just muted it again because I had to say my piece. But I said it with such confidence. And then I even share in the book, what they don't realize, it was only hours before that I was crying my face off, puffy eyes and everything, because I was like, what am I doing on this journey? But to the rest of the world, I had to give the front like, nope, this is what I'm doing. I'm defiant in my efforts, because you don't want to cast doubt to people who are watching, but you also don't want to cast doubt on yourself, even though you have those lonely, weird times and moments. But yeah, I was literally shedding all that part of me. And the other part about my journey was when I was in my career, I was younger than everybody by like 20 years. So as I was working this career, I was trying to keep up with the Joneses. And these are people that had been in their careers for 20, 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to keep up with them in order to kind of maintain this certain lifestyle. And then they go home to their wife and kids and everything that they've got going on. And I'm just trying to play a role as like this young college student that's successful. It's exhausting. By the time I was in my late 30s, my mother said to me, she's like, Cal, you look old, because the role and the facade and the job was just weighing me down. And it was hard.
Yes. I really resonate with what you said on everyone going home to their family, husband, kids, whatever, and they think they know you. They don't know what you do when you go home. They don't know the loneliness and the isolation and just being with your own thoughts and what that version of you is. And so people that would make those assumptions, or again, just know the facade, but the real you is at home starting this reckoning that, of course, people don't see. I think that's what makes other people uncomfortable. To stand in confidence and conviction and know what you were doing, you decided that in silence at home. But to other people, that's all they see, but they think they know you.
Yeah.
They think they're owed an explanation. And
That's so true. It's funny because I do mention the woman that said Jesus freaks are weirdos and you're not a weirdo. And I mentioned in the book, and I'm like, this lady tries to act like we're friends and she doesn't know me. And the irony about her that was upsetting was like, she tried to act like she was reaching out as a friend. She was probably just being nosy. And if she really was a friend of mine, she was a client that had business and she never gave me any business. And if you were truly my friend, you would bless me with business and feed my pocket. So that's when you'll really see who your true friends are.
Absolutely. Yes. One more thing before we transition, the golden handcuffs. I love that terminology. Is that something you came up with?
Probably
or
not.
That you heard along the way? I love it.
Yeah.
I'd never heard it before.
I don't know where it came from. I've been using it for years. And when I recognized that I was stuck in golden handcuffs, because that's what it is. The company basically owns you because they pay you. And especially when you have, my base salary back then was, well over 6 figures. So when a company pays you that much, they dictate your life. Saturday, Sunday, whatever it is, there's expectations of you. Like I remember when I first started my career, like it was frowned upon as a woman if you didn't have your nails done. Now there was nothing stipulated in a contract that stated that you must have your nails done, but it was obvious.
It was.
And, certain things like that you have to do these things in order to maintain that certain lifestyle. Even the car that we drove, especially if the company's paying you or giving you a car allowance, like they dictate what kind of car that you're going to drive. But you're stuck because what are you going to do? You're going to leave your job? No, you can't, because now you have bills to pay. So, I know that I was very fortunate that based upon like the courage that it took to leave that lifestyle, the only mouths I had to feed were myself and my dog. And most people don't have that freedom and liberty, but I'm still trying to show that like you can obtain your aloha, whether, you have a marriage, you have kids, whatever you've got going on in your life, you're in control of your own destiny. And therefore you can't blame anybody around you if you're not achieving the things that you want. If you look at your life and you're like, this isn't where I was supposed to be, like, what am I doing here? You need to change it. And you're right. Like what people don't recognize, especially in today's society, is we put so much noise and fluff around ourselves with everything that we're supposed to be doing and people in our ear and podcasts and YouTube and all that stuff, to where people don't actually go and sit by themselves in a space alone and contemplate who they are and what they want to do. And that can be the absolute game changer. So we're lucky when it's people like you and I that are alone, that have that ability to have like a deep dive reflection,
Yeah.
because most people don't, or they just don't take the time to.
Right. And even myself, I'm in this business. I'm on YouTube and in the realm. And I could tell recently I've got to shut it out and get really still, really quiet, and spend that alone time to recalibrate my goals, my vision, what I'm here for. That it's not always the input
Yeah.
in all directions. Yeah.
It is. I don't do it often. I like to have noise around. Like even when I sleep, I like to have noise. I don't do it often, but the two very profound things that happen in my life, the greatest gifts in my life, other than my husband, were during those times of like silence. And the first one was the calling to move to Hawaii. That happened just sitting on my bed and just silent, just kind of being present with myself and my God. And then the second time it happened, so now, fast forward, I go through this crazy journey, I get to Hawaii, and then like when I got there, I was like, okay, God, I did the plan, I've left everything, I'm basically broke now. And once I got to Hawaii, I was broke, and now I'm stuck here. He got me where he wanted me stuck there without a means to escape. So I ended up waiting, and I was just like, all right, any day I'm going to meet my husband because you promised me a husband. And every day you're expecting a miracle because that's how you want to think that God works. And he doesn't with me. He makes me wait patiently. Extremely annoying. But lo and behold, I worked many, many, many different jobs when I was in Hawaii. I ended up becoming the number one DJ for the island, hosting like big weddings and like corporate events. I worked for $15 an hour at a golf course, which turned out to be one of the greatest blessings. I met my best friend there, and COVID struck, and we were just kind of playing golf and hanging out. I did nannying for very wealthy families, and that was pretty brutal. But I did all these different things. So I'm living in Hawaii. It's like, I think I'm maybe like 3.5 years into living there, and all the dreams and promises didn't come true, but I truly became who I was meant to be and formed these relationships and recognized the real meaning of aloha. So then the second time in silence that God spoke to me, it was a Sunday night, and I couldn't sleep. And I just decided to just sit up in bed and just meditate. And I was kind of learning meditation at that time, but also meditation is sort of just being silent and present. And all of a sudden, in an instant, a download, like a blueprint, was downloaded into me. And I knew it was from the Lord. And he basically told me I was going to launch a recruiting company. And it was one of those reckoning moments that I knew this was the voice of God. And he was telling me I was starting a recruiting company, literally out of nowhere. Never owned a recruiting company. Obviously, it's something that I knew I'd be good at because I could put people together for purpose. And so, yeah, so the next day I launched the company. The following day, I hired a coach, and now it's been almost 4 years that I own a very successful business of my own that I give all glory and praise to the Lord. And it's in those moments of silence that God truly like speaks to me. So
Yes.
without that, I mean, God only
Yep.
knows where I'd be.
Yep. That's so critical when I talk about mindfulness, any sort of meditation, breath work. That is where all of that comes to me and speaks to me more so when I can get outside and connect with nature and just get real still, because you just look around and see the miracles of life, right?
Yeah.
Geographic things that are powerful that really get my mind right. That is so important. Just getting clear, resetting, and connecting with any sort of higher power, making any decisions, guiding forces. I think it's so key. You start your recruiting company, you're super successful there. Then what?
Well, so that's kind of the kicker. So
Yeah.
I knew that God was promising me a husband in Hawaii, and that was the deepest desire in my heart. So the whole journey, like I'm expecting, okay, any day now, like it's time to meet my guy. I've given my life to you. Like, where is he? And so I kind of put a lot into that, obviously, into my thoughts, but then you kind of relinquish it and you're like, okay, this whole journey is for me to prepare and grow. And so long story short, I was in Hawaii for 3.5 years. And then about 6 months before I left the island, I'd gone on a date with a guy. He was a tourist. And we ended up having this fabulous date, greatest guy I've ever met. But when you live 5 hours by flight to the mainland, you don't pursue relationships. You don't keep in touch with people. So we had this great date, didn't stay in touch, didn't text, call, social media, nothing. And then it was 6 months later that I got called to move away from Hawaii for a job that I was working. They wanted me in Arizona. So I just remember being like very grumpy about it because I was like, well, I didn't meet my husband here. So this whole journey was in vain and useless. And of course, I was upset about it. I was like, I felt like the Lord deceived me. So sure enough, I leave Hawaii, come to Arizona. And when I first got to Arizona, my life was in shambles. Like the shipping company totaled my car. The recruiting company that I knew that the Lord had given to me was failing, like astronomically failing. My domains got burnt. I couldn't get any clients. Like nothing was going right. I had this coach and everybody else in the coaching platform is succeeding but me. And I just couldn't understand what was going wrong. And then I got very, very sick. And then when I got to Arizona, I ended up finding a roommate and she was just a disaster of a human being. And she brought a lot of chaos into the peace that I had, especially leaving Hawaii. So I kept looking back at Hawaii and I was like, why did I leave Hawaii? Like I had, job, friends, a home, everything was wonderful. And I just kept looking back on the life. And I was mad too, because I was like, I didn't even meet my husband yet. Maybe I left too soon. So sure enough, I arrive in Arizona, chaos. And then I get a text message from the handsome stranger that I'd met the year before in Hawaii. And he said, hey, I looked you up and I realized you had moved to Arizona. He said, I'm in the Air Force and I'm actually getting relocated to Arizona in a few months. Let's link up. Sure enough, our second date was a year to the day of our first date that we met in Hawaii. And then 3 years later to that day, he got on his knee and proposed. And now we're officially happily married. And the truth was I did meet my husband in Hawaii as promised. And, we think that we know God's ways and his thoughts, but what we should lie on is his promises. If he promises us something, he will come through, not as we expect it. So I'm still like his bratty daughter. I'm still God's bratty little daughter, and I'm the thankful bratty daughter. So everything did work out. So after giving everything away, leaving the golden handcuffs and everything that my life was stuck in, I got all the desires of my heart and then some. I left an industry and a job and golden handcuffs. But by giving that away, now I'm a successful business owner. I make more money in my own business than I ever did in my career. And of course, I've got the wonderful husband that we're aligned in faith and life. And I mean, that's wonderful. So if I didn't decide to pivot my life and take this like fanatical, wild journey to Hawaii, I wouldn't have found my aloha. And my aloha now is my family, my husband, my business, and like the peace that exudes anything that I could imagine in life. And it's not about stuff. I mean, after I gave away everything I own, like I really still don't keep much. I just don't store up, treasures here on earth. Like I store up treasures for heaven. I mean, you can see my office right here. It's just an empty room.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah. So, pursue your aloha, whatever that means. I think a lot of us are really trying to strive for freedom, but I don't know what makes everybody else happy. I just try to do my own thing.
Right. We all have different things that make us happy. We share our stories and are vulnerable enough to share it and hope it resonates with some people. You take parts from people's stories and lived experiences and leave what doesn't resonate. But we all have to come to that reckoning on our own. And I think if you don't, that's where you're really going to look back in life with those regrets and shoulds. The shoulds and the supposed tos, I loop through them. But I think if I didn't take risks and if I didn't pursue what I was hearing, I would have even bigger regrets. I don't regret any experience because I know it was building to something bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like if you stay in a relationship for too long, and I'm sure a lot of us have done that. And then you're like, what was I thinking when you're finally out of it? Same thing. I mean, look, I'm a recruiter now. So I talk to so many people now that will call me and say, I should have left that company a long time ago. And now here I am because I got laid off last week when I knew I should have left them years ago. I should have taken the call from the recruiter that I got last year, but now I'm unemployed because I stuck out a position that I hated. And because people just feel stuck. And if you think about it, like, what's the worst that can happen? If you decide to bet on yourself, what's the worst that can happen? The one thing I think that motivated me the most was put yourself in a position that failure is not an option. So what's going to happen if this fails? Like, am I going to die? No. You're going to figure it out. And I think that if you bet on yourself versus betting on anybody else, especially not an employer, because look, if you die tomorrow, your job's going to be posted quicker than your obituary. So you need to put you as numero uno. Same thing I tell people, especially when we talk about like LinkedIn for professionals. I'm like, you need to brand your page as yourself, not your company, not the company that pays you. You are the brand. You're the one that they hire because you're the one that has the experience and expertise that companies need. So bet on yourself. Don't bet on anybody else. Don't bet on the company. Just consider being confident and self-aware and, love yourself, obviously, because I think that ultimately will like lead you and guide you into what you should be doing. If you're living for the world or anybody else, unfortunately that fails you. Man fails you. I could tell you biblically, nothing in the Bible tells you depend on man. Nothing. Because people will fail you. So depend on yourself and whatever that is to you. I mean, for me, it's God and Jesus. And I talk about that openly. I don't push my faith on anybody because that's totally up to you. But, just believe in yourself, number one, and you'll get there. It's a hard road. If I had to go through and do it again, knowing the outcome, I absolutely would. Would it have been helpful if I truly believed the outcome would look like this? Probably. That's the thing. Like, how much excitement do we have in life if we really know how everything's going to turn out? Not much. People want to go and see like psychics and stuff like that. It's like, for what? For me, if I had probably had a little bit more faith, even though I'm sure my journey speaks a lot of my faith, if I had more faith, I probably would have cried less about the journey. But to know that the end result looks like this and it's a beautiful life and everything's wonderful, like, yeah, I would have totally gone through it all over again. If I hadn't gone through this, man, I would have been miserable. If I was still waking up today working for that job that I worked 10 years ago, miserable. And I would have been very upset with myself, full on regret.
Absolutely. You said you become who you needed to be. I love that. So on your journey, I know the Bible was your go-to book. Any other books, points of reference that were guides for you?
You know what? Along my journey, which was super powerful, is the majority of the time spent that I wasn't reading, I was journaling. And that's how you really do get to know yourself. I mean, I was journaling and my thoughts, and it probably made it a lot easier to write the book because I had everything, written down, dates, times, and stuff like that. And that's what, like, when you're having deep conversations with yourself, it's wild. And now even looking back on it and pulling out those journeys, those journals, it's like, who is this person? Because you see you're going through something. And me and my husband agreed on something because he's had his own sort of journey himself, and I won't share that, but he said, he's like, when you're going through it, you feel the most alive. If anybody's been on something that's been so hard and it's a grind, like, it's the most you feel truly alive. Like, I mean, on my journey, I was asking God, I was like, do I turn left or right? Do I eat this or that? Like, you're so much more grateful for everything. A cup of coffee was just like gold. And I mean, it was wonderful. I was writing a lot of poems, and I don't know, there's something about that freedom in the journey where you're not worried about your job or your people or answering to anybody. And you're just kind of self-involved, so to speak. I mean, something happens, something kind of shakes you and breaks you to make you into like this just artistic, interesting creature where you see everything around you and you're like, none of this matters. I felt like an absolute weirdo, but I mean, still, it was a beautiful weirdo.
The fast pace of society and work stifles so much creativity that we don't even know who we are or what we enjoy anymore. I talk to so many people that are like, hobbies. I don't have hobbies. I don't have talents. Or again, you take on whatever hobby your company does, as far as a walking challenge or a book study. But no, you need to break free and explore. Is it writing? Is it painting? Is it cooking, sewing, knitting, camping, and things you would have never thought about doing? We stop exploring because we turn to performing.
Yeah. That's such a great way to look at it. One of the first campsites I stopped at, I just remember it was like a Friday, and I decided to take a hike. And I actually had to sit and think, like, what would I be doing right now if I wasn't on this journey? I'd be sitting my ass in front of my desk and working and not out here just exploring and being in nature and feeling free. Like I would be worried and stressed. And, I actually talk about that a lot. And without taking that journey, I mean, I'd still be stuck in it. And you meet interesting people along the way. I'm not saying that everybody obviously has to pick up and live out of a tent. I'm obviously saying that you need to take some risks and explore you. If you're working a job that you hate, like, and you always envision maybe opening up a hot dog stand, go do it. Nothing should hold you back in this world. And especially if you live here in the United States, it's the greatest country on earth. Like we have the liberty and freedom to succeed. There's nothing holding you back as American citizen. No matter your age, your race, your nationality, if you're a boy or a girl, it's so opportunistic to do anything that you could ever imagine. And I feel so grateful. Like I feel like I won the life lottery a lot of the times because I get to live in this country. But even so, like explore the world, get out there, go see other cultures. I come from a very small town in upstate New York, and the majority of the people that I grew up with don't even have a passport. Like they've never actually gone out and traveled. And that's the thing. You kind of get into like the expectation. So every year, as expected, you take the trip to Florida in February and you go spend your money at Disney. And then that's it. And you go back to that normal life. And I mean, to become stagnant in life like that and not even be excited about anything but a trip to Florida once a year, that's daunting.
Yeah, I've really found I need less trips because I don't need to escape.
That's beautiful. Very beautiful.
Yeah, it's working towards that place and that life where you're living each day the way you want, that you don't need to go somewhere. But I do love travel, and you're right. I have learned so much about myself and just about life and lived experiences through travel,
especially by yourself.
How other people live. Yeah.
If you travel by yourself, that's really eye-opening, especially as a woman. I've traveled internationally a bunch of times completely by myself, and it's so much value to you and your character and who you are. But now, I mean, I love to travel with my husband because there were times when I was travel alone. I'm like, man, I wish I could share this experience with somebody. Like I went to the Anne Frank house, and walking out of there, I just remember I felt so much, and I was by myself. I, nobody to share it with. So yeah, I mean, there's so much value in connecting with others, but there's so much value in just taking time out of this crazy world that like everything is vying for your attention, to just turn it off and be alone and be one. And just be in silence. I floated around the pool on this past Saturday, and I just remember thinking like, oh, here I am floating in silence. Well, there's chaos at the pool, but just kind of floating and just thinking like, wow, like how beautiful this moment is, from like taking away from everything else we're supposed to do.
Yes. Water is definitely my calming place. Yeah, wherever it is.
You need to go to Hawaii.
You're starting to convince me. It's one of the few places I haven't been in the U.S.
Wow.
So I know. Yeah. I need to work on that. Okay. So what's your favorite place to visit?
I'm open to anywhere. I really am.
Yeah.
I've been to Rome a whole bunch of times, and like, I wouldn't say it's my favorite. You know where it was super beautiful, even though I lived in Hawaii, was Santorini, Greece. It's as beautiful as the photos, and it was lovely. I don't know. Here's the thing. Me and my husband, we don't have kids. So we're like two little kids, and we like to go and like do the fun things like water slides and roller coasters. Like we're doing Disney, and then we're taking a cruise here in a month. We're going I'm originally from Rochester, so I'm taking him to my hometown at the end of the month, and I'm going to show him basically where I grew up, and then we're going to go to the Finger Lakes, and that's like beautiful. It's wine country. So yeah, you could literally spin the globe and like point somewhere, and I'm going.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
I definitely have that adventurous spirit.
Well, I love it, and I love your story and appreciate you sharing it with me and the world. Do you have any parting advice for those who are feeling stuck?
Yeah, absolutely. Bet on yourself first. And if you decide you're going to do something, put yourself in a position that failure is not an option. I can promise you, my God has never failed me. He likes to take me to the end of the cliff and dangle me off where I think I'm falling, and then just scoop me up and say, psych, but he's never failed me. So if you have something and it's pure and it's good with good intentions and it's positive for the world or for yourself or for life, obviously nothing like ill intent. because that's not going to go well for you. But anything that's positive and beautiful and good and helpful to others, definitely pursue it with all of your worth. Bet on yourself, put yourself in a position that failure is not an option, and go all in. And you will not fail. You're going to have hard times. That's a promise. But when you come out the other side of it, you'll be very proud of your journey and you won't have any regrets in life. So go for it. What do you have to lose?
Exactly. Well, I love it. And people that want to find your book and find you can go where?
So 2 places. You can go to www.kellydockrell.com. You can find the book Acclaimed Journey to Aloha on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Target, like 100 different sites. You can also find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's definitely my bread and butter. I own a recruiting company called Acclaim Recruiters. And that's when we go and we help people find jobs with good companies that have good culture environments. And I post a lot of content on there just to make sure that everybody knows that, who we are and just trying to help people. That's about it.
I will link that in the show notes as well so that the listeners can find you and connect and learn more. I thank you for joining us on the Midlife Catalyst today.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining Midlife Catalyst, a place where ordinary people share extraordinary stories of growth and change at any age or stage of life. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure and hit the like button. Give us a follow and subscribe so you don't miss a moment of any future episode. You never know where I may be or what my face might say. If you enjoyed today's show, leave a comment so I know what resonated with you. Be sure to share the episode with a friend who you think might benefit from Kelly's story. Become a free subscriber to my Substack page, amandayounts.substack.com, or visit my website at midlifecatalyst.net for more resources and show notes. I'm Amanda Younts, and I'm so grateful for you coming on this journey with me as I learn to fly. Remember, AI can do a lot, but it cannot write your story. Be the CEO of your life and write your own narrative. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you among the wildflowers.